Dr. Mark Scatterday, thank you for joining us on Podium Perspectives. We are just honored to have you here today.
Great to be here.
Yeah. All right. So let's get right into. Was there somebody that in particular that inspired you to be a conductor?
Yeah, well, I think a combination of the conductors that I've had over the years, but um, when I went to University of Michigan to study trombone for my master's degree with Dennis Smith, I knew what I was getting into in terms of the conductors that I was going to be playing for, and I was really excited about that. It was H. Robert Reynolds, um, and then Carl St. Clair, who had just recently, I think, won the Exxon Award at that time,
Okay.
and then Gustav Meyer, of course.
Yeah.
And I mean, I kind of called them the trinity of conducting teachers, and I was so fortunate to be able to play for them and study with them, and that really changed my life because at that point I was still going to play trombone in the Cleveland Orchestra.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
And you grew up in Cleveland, right?
I grew up in Akron.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
My father was a mathematician, taught at University of Akron, and my mother was an artist in the area. So, Akron and Cleveland are so close. I mean, we were all constantly going to Cleveland Orchestra concerts when I was a kid. So that
Right.
I think probably in the '60s, the conductors that I saw with the Cleveland Orchestra also kind of inspired me to get into music, not necessarily to be a conductor, uh,
Sure.
but and then coming here to at Eastman to do my doctorate in conducting, I had already committed to be a conductor, but having Donald Hunsberger and Ray Wright and Don Newen and David Efron,
Yeah.
I called them the Fantastic Four, uh, and I studied with all of them, and as we had chatted before, it was a great experience for me to actually study conducting rather than just wind conducting.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you think? Actually, I wanted to ask you since the last time we talked. Is Eastman's approach the same as when we were students there? Is it if you come in to do your master's in conducting, is it still you get to study with everyone?
Well, I think you have to be proactive individually on that.
Okay.
And it kind of depends on who is here. As you know, Don Newen was very receptive to working with anybody,
Yeah.
and I studied the Britain War Requiem with him, and then
Amazing.
actually sang it with him in the ERC, and that was a great project for me to do. And David Efron was always very welcoming to all the students, the choral
Yeah.
and instrumental students. And Ray Wright, you could just learn so much from Ray Wright because of his experiences in New York and as a professional. They each had something separate. So if it attracted you as a student, you could go to them and say, "Hey, I'd really like to do some work with you. Can we develop maybe a couple projects? Can I take your class? Can I study privately with you?" So each one had a different kind of concept of how they wanted to work with, I guess, students that were not directly in their studio. Because,
Gotcha.
the conductors still had their studio students that they accepted into their studios. And so it can be very siloed at a lot of places,
Yeah.
where there's no interaction. But it's encouraged, but it's not required. You see, so some students, if they want to come and just get the choral experience and work with Bill Weiner, they decide to do that. But they all work with me in a basic conducting class because they TA it with me. So all the
Oh.
I work with all the DMA students, and they actually learn how to teach conducting, instrumental and choral, with undergraduate students. And we do have some graduate students taking beginning conducting too that didn't have anything in their undergraduate years. But
Right.
I work with every single one of the doctoral students here at Eastman and many of the master students.
Oh, that's great. That brings up a question that I'd be fascinated to ask of you. So when I used to teach conducting at the collegiate level, there was like stereotypical situations that you had to fix. So if a student came in and their only conducting experience was being a drum major of a marching band, you can imagine the things that you have to adjust for that. When you're thinking about maybe people that were only choral conductors coming into your program, or only band or only orchestra, are there some obvious things that you're like, you know what, this choral person is really going to learn something from me because they've not experienced X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, well, this basic conducting class usually is between 40 and 50 students.
Okay.
And
Wow.
and that's why I have a lot of TAs because each week, I'll teach the class all together, and then we divide into labs every week.
Okay.
Each TA has at least one lab of maybe 8 students that they work, so they get to conduct each other and they play for each other and sing for each other. We do a lot of singing in the class. So, I mean, but that's kind of my concept in
Yeah.
teaching. Um, but yeah, I of let's just say the students that I have right now, it's a real mixed bag. I have pianists taking the class just as an elective. I have organists and music education majors taking the class because it's required, for them. And then
Right.
then I have, maybe some students that are like an oboe player or a trombone player that um, maybe in some conversation with them along the way when, because I have them all in ensemble too, right?
Right.
Um, that they have learned that maybe if they learned a little bit about conducting, they would get a lot more out of the ensemble experience and be more competitive for jobs because they understand both sides of the podium.
Right.
I mean, it's so
Right.
important because
Yeah.
I tell you what, there may be one or two students in my class right now that will become professional conductors that are not even thinking that right now.
Right.
They were
Right.
like me. They wanted to follow their teacher in the Cleveland Orchestra, right? But and I'm not teaching the class to like give them one more thing that they can do in music to make them, compete. I'm actually trying to take the perspective. If you learn a lot about what it's like to be on the podium and conduct other players like yourself, you're going to learn a lot about playing for conductors.
Yeah. Right.
And so to me, it's that give and take situation where I call it the conductor player relationship. You see? But to answer your question, even I think more succinctly, yeah, there are some choral conductors that come in that are very uncomfortable conducting instruments,
Yeah.
and vice versa. There's
Sure.
all the instrumental conductors are very resistant to sing in class. You see? So it's a hard class to teach because you don't have a common denominator that's very clear. Um,
Right.
each student is so individual, has such individual needs, but you try to do a holistic approach to it. So my one of my big things in the class is how do they learn from each other? So when one's conducting the class and I'm working with that conductor, I make sure that people are interacting with the process of me teaching that one person on the podium because they're going to be up there next. And
Right.
if you learn something from the person before you, it's exponential rather than you just wait until you get up there and you learn. So I say to them, let's say I work with 5 conductors in the class one day. I say to number 2, 3, 4, and 5, I say, I don't want to say the same thing I said to the person before you.
Right.
See? So if you're listening,
Right.
like if I talk about posture or I talk about emotion in the face or just hand gesture, take that from the student that was just up there and really think about how you would want to apply that. But if we start with each student from scratch each time, like at a base point, and they're not learning from each other, it's not as productive.
Yeah. Well, that's a great philosophy across the board for education, isn't it? That's
I hope
learning
so.
from each other, and yeah, that's
I,
wonderful.
yeah, I mean, one of my things in conducting an ensemble is, I kid about this a little bit. I said, but you know what? I've got 2 jobs. My one job is your success, okay? And my other job is putting together a great ensemble in a room and having them just turn each other on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can
Yeah.
tell. See, the one thing that, for instance, the trombone players in the back don't see is when the brass really sound great, the woodwinds sit up in their chairs.
Yeah. I
But
love that.
if they're struggling, sometimes the woodwinds are giving me this look like, you know,
Do something, Daddy.
I'm not into this. I'm not yet, you know. So that's why I think that creating a great environment for them to sound great. You know, what
Right.
environment do I create? And it's a
Yeah.
thousand different ways. But what environment do I create for them to sound great?
And when you say that, I can think of so many different ways that you might establish that. What are a couple of key ways of establishing that sort of collaborative environment that makes everyone want to work hard?
Well, I think it starts with my preparation. You know, so I've got to come in there and I've got to be the expert in the room.
Right.
Okay, first rehearsal, they're going to need me about 80%. Okay, I mean
Yeah.
they know how to read music, but they don't know the piece, right? In most
Right.
cases. I think the last 20, 30 years, it's a little easier because there's so much great music that's very accessible to them to listen to before the first rehearsal.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think that my job, I think, is to come in there and so well prepared as if they're in the professional world, which is what we're trying to prepare them for, that there's kind of a psychology in the room that starts right then. Okay, here we go. And as you know, we do a lot of concerts here and not as much rehearsing. Okay?
Right.
So the first rehearsal is a rehearsal. It's not a sight reading session. And they get their music
Okay.
while they're still in the orchestra, the cycle before me, their music for wind ensemble is available that they should have it prepared, just like the professional world. If you ever look at a professional orchestra's contract, in their contract, it says that the music for each concert should be available to them at least 2 or 3 weeks before they start the first rehearsal so that they can be prepared. So if you kind of set that tone right off the bat, you're you're giving yourself a really good chance to have, a great cycle with an ensemble. But as you know, I get two different groups every 2.5 weeks. So it's
Right. Would
it's
you
hard.
explain that to our audience really quick? Because that Eastman system, I think, is very unique. The only one. I don't know. But
No,
explain that a little bit.
there are a lot of hybrid versions. I mean, for instance, when we talked earlier about the wind ensemble, what is a wind ensemble? Okay, and
Right.
there are a lot of hybrid kind of wind ensembles too. That there are some doubling, but not as much. But we just don't. It's one on a part in the one wind ensemble. So it's like the orchestra. Okay, I
Right.
mean, if you look at the orchestra, there's not two second clarinet players. Okay,
Right.
unless there's some
Right.
Debussy, I guess. But anyways. Well, with our rotation system, let's take an oboe player and say first cycle that oboe player will start with me in wind ensemble, their junior year or senior year or their first year of their masters, and then in probably about 7 rehearsals, so it's about a little over 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, we'll give a concert. Then that student then by their teacher's assignment, their studio teachers assign all their parts and what group they're going to
Oh, interesting. Okay.
16 times a year. Okay, so then that student might go to the orchestra, or they may go to new music, or they may go to opera, or there's a lot of different paths along the
Right.
way. The whole idea of our rotation system, though, is for them to get that full experience every year. That
Love it.
they will play in the orchestra. It's not like there's a lot of places where you come to a school and the first week everybody auditions for an ensemble.
Right.
And then you get placed in an ensemble and that's your ensemble. Okay?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool for the conductors because if a conductor has an ensemble for a whole semester or a whole year, they can really establish something that's very, very, unified.
Yeah.
But for the student that wants to play in the orchestra and they get stuck with Scatterday in the wind ensemble, I hope they don't think that. But a, a student here knows that, okay, I'm gonna do this great concert with the wind ensemble, but if that's not going to be my whole life this year.
Right.
I'm going to get to play all this great music with different ensembles, different conductors, and I think it's really great for them. It keeps them on their toes too because they are constantly preparing new styles, new music. Like for instance, in the orchestra, they're probably playing music that a lot of them know or know of.
Right. Yes.
In my
Yeah.
on my ensemble, they're playing a lot of new music and music that they've never been exposed to. So styles, different ways of playing, different techniques. Same in Musica Nova, they're probably playing music that they've never heard of, and they've never even heard of the composer, maybe. Okay,
Right. Right.
yeah. So,
That's fantastic.
that I think is important for them to get every year. And let's see, each one of them does that 8 times. And I said 16 times because I do it 16 because I have two ensembles. Yeah.
Right, I see. Yeah. What after a student plays a rotation with one of your ensembles, what do you hope that they would get uniquely from you after playing with Dr. Scatterday? A student approaches music differently. What's something that you want every student to take away from your ensembles?
Well, I hope that let's say a student that just has never played for me before, let's say a first year master's, they get thrown right into wind ensemble, and they may be from some other place that they didn't ever play in the orchestra, maybe, or in a true wind ensemble. They played in a big band. Okay.
Right.
Hopefully they get from me a professionalism that's at a very high level. And if they haven't had that before, I hope that it's a big eye opener. Like, okay, do you realize this is the Eastman Wind Ensemble?
You last time we talked, you told me a story about a sax player that came in unprepared. Would you tell that story again, please?
Well, this poor guy had no clue what he was getting into, okay? And especially who I was. But unfortunately, totally unprepared. And didn't really seem like he wanted to be there. And I'm thinking, okay, you're a classical saxophone player. Are you just interested in playing in jazz even though you don't improvise? I mean, so you need to be able to grow in an ensemble like this, and you can get a lot out of it, right? I mean, that's kind of the unspoken thing at Eastman is playing in an ensemble is should change you in so many different ways. Okay. So the poor guy was having a tough time, but he really also did not have a great attitude about it. But sometimes when students are embarrassed, they just give you that "I don't care," attitude.
Right.
And so that might have been a problem there too. But I noticed that a lot of students were kind of looking around at him like, "Come on, man," because we had to stop and start so many times for this player. And that
Wow.
was very unusual. And again, the first year masters is really thrown into the fire at Eastman because the junior and senior that have been playing in the Eastern Wind Ensemble, they know me, they know what I expect, and they better prepare that first rehearsal. Okay? And nobody told this poor guy, I guess.
Yeah.
So eventually I had to stop and I say, what's going on? And of course the room gets really quiet. And the rest of the players that know me, they know that, okay, here comes Scatterday. He's going to give you one. And he says, I don't know. And I said, well, this is the Eastman Wind Ensemble. And the rest of the students turn and look at him and they go, I didn't have to say anything else. And so there's another thing that the students learn from each other. And the guy was great after a while, after he kind of got it, that he can't just come in there and expect to get anything out of this. In fact, he's keeping other people from learning.
Right.
So what you do is you put that responsibility on them. That's a very big thing in the wind ensemble because you are only responsible for your part. Like you're not playing seventh string bass out of 8.
Right.
You see, I mean that kid. Do you ever look at the back of the second violin section?
Do as a conductor?
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
like even in the audience, do you ever look back?
Oh, right.
Let's say it's not a great orchestra.
Right.
Those kids are kind of mailing it in because they don't
Yeah.
think it even matters because nobody can hear them anyways.
Right. Right.
I'm being a little facetious with that. But,
Sure. But I get what you mean. Yeah.
You can't
Can't coast.
hide. Don Hunsberger Don Hunsberger did it even better than I did one time, and I think I learned a lot of the kind of the sarcasm from him in a way because he had this, he played in the United States Marine Band. He was the chief ranger.
Yeah.
This guy went through a rigorous training. Okay, I remember a third trumpet player. Okay, so there's only three trumpet players, right? And third trumpet player having the same kind of problem and attitude. And Hans is not dealing with that, man. And I was in the room because I was a student, one of his students there, and he stopped and he says to the third trumpet player, he says, "Look to your left." Of course, the student looks to the left, there's nothing there, right?
Yeah.
He goes, "There's nowhere to go." And of course, the kid did not get it. But I just wanted to howl just like you did,
Yeah. Yeah.
But the silence was just unbearable. And I think it really worked too. He had such a way of giving you just kind of one zinger.
Yeah.
But the one thing I think is important when you do that, and I hope my students experience that with me too, because if I do kind of call them on something, hey, this is not great,
Yeah.
and you got to be careful anymore about how you criticize people. I mean, people have gotten more and more sensitive, I think.
It's true. Yeah.
Okay. And so, like I might say, hey, you're not a really, really good player yet. And this is how we're gonna solve that. You see,
that.
but if I didn't go with yet, and I just left it at you're not a good player, or I treated them that way. So I think my players know it's what I call the Dutch uncle syndrome. You know what a Dutch uncle is?
No, I've never heard that.
A Dutch uncle is not really your uncle, but he's going to take care of you. And the neat thing about it is he doesn't have to worry about your parents because he's not related to your parents. And he's going to be honest with you, and you can count on him. Because sometimes an uncle, because I'm an uncle almost 20 times over now, a great uncle and an uncle. I will stop short sometimes because I love these kids so much because they're mine, right? Okay.
Yeah.
But a Dutch uncle will also do it with love, but it's a little more honest. You see? And I hope that my students know that the only reason I'm calling them on something like, boy, you really need to work on the pitch here. Okay? That they don't take it like a criticism, but they take it that I'm really pretty sure that if they work on this, they'll get better.
Right.
Because sometimes, I mean, just little things like that, they may not hear something. And, intonation is a tough thing to talk about. Oh, I just lost you. Sorry. Intonation is a tough thing to talk about because it's so sensitive too, and it's so subjective. It can be.
Right.
So, just things like, instead of saying you're sharp, which I think is a little abusive, you go about it saying, this sounds a little high to me. Now that's still saying the same thing,
Boy, that's a great approach.
And what it might also mean is what I usually do is I'll say, this sounds a little high to me. Let's try this again. Or second oboe sounds a little low here, rather than you're flat.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
But it also puts me in a perspective that I might be wrong. That, I'm not this authority that's right on everything and you're wrong on everything. But let's try it. So what I do is I open up that collaborative kind of thought with them, maybe make them at ease a little bit with fixing something, but not feeling like I'm just criticizing them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Do you find the more experience you gained through the years, the more humble you became as a conductor and as a leader?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. When I first started teaching, I was only 5 years older than my seniors.
Right.
And they wanted to be my buddy and, that kind of thing. So I had to develop a pretty strict barrier that they couldn't cross for years when I was in my 20s. students still kind of sometimes treated me like I was, in their generation or one of their
Yeah.
pals. And no, I'm your teacher, and
That's so wise.
and
That is so
well,
wise.
but the thing is, I think it created a little bit of I was pretty tough. Now,
Gotcha.
I hope that I'm still tough, but I hope that I have learned so much from situations where let's just say the hard ones where a student really gets upset by something I said,
Yeah.
or a look that I gave them. And boy, you never mean it. You never mean for them to get upset, but this is an emotional art form,
Right.
and you have to be more and more. And like I said, the sensitivity has increased too. So I think I have to be more receptive and understanding. I think empathetic. I try not to be too sympathetic because then it's the uncle thing, not the Dutch uncle thing, and it's you'll be fine. I love you,
Yeah. Right.
because I have a very short time for these kids to get good,
Yeah.
and like I said, that's my only job is their success. So, but if you're with me, if you want to work with me and let me push you and let me guide you in certain areas that you may actually find that makes you better, then I guarantee you you're going to get better. I'm very confident in my skills as a teacher and a conductor that I can take you from here to here. And with each student it's different, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But along the way, you do have to be kind of humble, I think, because that's when the barrier really goes up is when it's you against them. And
Right.
I think that a lot of students come into this business thinking that the conductor is the enemy that maybe somebody told them that, you
Yeah.
know? And boy, sometimes you have to break that down. But I think it's easy. Just you can't be their buddy, but
Right.
you can be somebody that is very nurturing.
Yeah. Do you use humor in your rehearsals?
I hope so, but I mean, none of my jokes are funny according to them. But I'll say something, and I think a lot of times they're just so thinking about everything else that they don't get it.
Yeah.
Because I don't tell jokes that are real obvious. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Like knock knock. But something in rehearsal will bring something to mind. I tell a lot of stories. You can ask them that, and I
Yeah.
have to be careful with that too. But I think that a lot of things remind me of some of my personal experiences. And I try to get, especially my young conductors, to think about when they conduct and they need an emotion, is to think about a personal experience that will put you into that emotion.
Hmm.
But then I remember they're 18 years old and they haven't had a lot of personal experiences that have been so profound that would make a difference in the way they look or they play.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that you just need to develop a trust, a respect, um, but also a humor that when you need it, when the going gets tough, and you're thinking, you know what? Here's what they need to hear right now. They need to hear us. They need to hear a story, or they
Yeah.
they need to hear a joke about something like this, and just to kind of clear the air. But like my wife would say, your jokes are not funny. But what I learned from my father, who was a great storyteller and a great joke teller, is if you laugh after you tell your own joke, and it's a really great laugh, they'll laugh with you.
Right.
You know. So yeah,
That's
they
awesome.
sometimes they cross their eyes and they look at me, but they know I'm trying. See, I think that's the other thing is they know I'm trying to be. I have a human element with them when I know that they're really struggling, and sometimes it really breaks the ice. I've done recordings where the computer went off, and I've got to stand up there for 5 minutes with the ensemble while they fix the recording, and I'm not going to let them go for 5 minute break because you never get them back for 20 minutes, right?
Right.
And studio time is expensive.
Yeah.
So I tell stories. I tell, and I just and I hope that they enjoy some of them and they get some of them, and that it's, maybe changes their reality a little bit, that I'm not this thing up there on the podium. I'm a human being. I like the fact that I'm an Eastman grad
Hmm.
because I think they can see, hey, yeah, I think a lot of us try to, I think, model, you know, if you work really hard and you treat people well, there's something here for you in music. You can have a
Right.
career. You can have a
Right.
career. Because
Yeah.
they're still very nervous about, if this is this going to work out? Because there's no
Yeah.
guarantees. Just because you get accepted into the Eastman School of Music doesn't mean that you're going to have a career.
No,
You have to
absolutely not.
work. You have to work really hard and treat people well.
Right. Hey, you mentioned the last time we spoke about you grew up playing viola, trombone, piano as well. Did you do some piano as well?
Piano was first. Yeah.
Piano was first. Got you. You sang in the Cleveland Symphony Chorus, Cleveland
Live
Orchestra
Orchestra
Chorus.
Chorus. Yep.
So you bring a lot more to the table than most conductors do. When you have a student come into your master's program to be a conducting student of yours who was a trombone player, but only a trombone player,
Yeah.
how do you try to, I mean, do you even try to sort of share, I don't know, like how do you get the same sort of understanding of music out of them that you had that was poured into you all
Yeah.
through your life?
Yeah. I mean, I was really lucky because
Yeah.
a lot of these choices were just kind of like, okay, we're going to do this. I mean, my parents were so uh, you know, both my grandparents were professional singers, and
Okay.
my aunt sang in the Met for 35 years in the Met chorus.
Wow.
So singing was everything. Music was everything in our house, and it was just kind of understood. So, what do you want to do? Oh, you're going to take piano. You're going to start piano lessons with your grandmother at 5 years old, you know, and then you're going to go on and do this. And of course, of course, you want to play in the orchestra, and your sister plays cello, so you're going to play viola, and then wanting to be in the band, of course, but I think probably the luckiest thing I had in my influence younger that a lot of these students don't have is the singing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's another conductor that changed my life is Bob Page.
Oh.
Yeah, you know,
When
just a
did you work with Bob Page?
Cleveland Orchestra Chorus.
Oh, right.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And he offered me a full ride to come and study voice at Carnegie Duquesne. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Carnegie Mellon. And of course I knew I wasn't going to be a professional singer. Okay.
Okay.
Um, it, I think the instrumental world was more my community comfort zone. You
Fair.
know, when the chorus was warming each other up and they're tapping each other on the back and doing this, and I'm thinking, but singing was and still is everything to me. And so to take your question, and I get trombone players all the time that they're just a trombone player.
Yeah.
That's all they do. And I'm thinking, man, that's tough. Because you probably can have, you're a good trombone player. You're probably going to have a career as a trombone player. But how limiting is that in a profession that is going to expose you to all kinds of things as a trombone player? Because if your only resource to have a career is to play a solo trombone,
Good luck.
I'm not even talking with a piano player, right? My piano experiences enable me to work with pianists very well, I think.
Yeah.
You see, and the same thing with singers and string players. And so I'm always encouraging them. But the trombone player is kind of the interesting, but the euphonium player is maybe the most interesting because how does that happen, right?
Right.
And a lot of times it's a trumpet player that in fifth grade that's really struggling with the embouchure and the mouthpiece and everything. And we can move you to euphonium. You'll be fine.
Same fingering.
Yeah. And they play all this trombone repertoire, right? But they don't play trombone. Now, if you know the difference between euphonium and trombone, it's huge. I mean, if you close your eyes, you think, oh, well, maybe that sounds similar, because one's conical, one's cylindrical, that's fine. But the trombone really is a very, very different instrument. And I tell all the euphonium players, while you're here, you should play in the Eastman Trombone Choir. Don't just play euphonium, because they have this tuba mirum ensemble too. That's fine. That's
Right.
great.
Right.
But and they look at me like I'm from Mars because no, I'm a euphonium player. Thinking, man, that's pretty limited. You
Yeah.
know? Yeah. Because especially the only jobs that are out there for you are the military jobs
Right.
or teaching euphonium. But that's how you get one of those by playing.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and it's the same thing with classical saxophone. I mean, you want to encourage them to get other experience, play the piano, sing, maybe even play a different. Now the saxophones, they play all the saxophones. So and in every cycle, every rotation, they change. Like so, somebody
Oh,
might be playing soprano sax on this cycle, and the next cycle they're playing bari or bass sax even.
wow.
So there, but the euphonium players playing euphonium only in the wind ensemble, and maybe just once in their lifetime, if they're lucky, they play Mahler seven.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like okay, or pictures, right?
Yeah. Right. Right. Tell me your philosophy about inside out conducting.
Well, I I think I made that up, but I
We'll give
tell
you credit.
I tell students I should write a book, and it just should be in conducting inside out, and you open the book and there's nothing in there. Um, but my my perspective on that is there's too much outside, outside in. So what that means is a lot of teaching of conducting is, place your hand here and do this. It's calligraphy.
Right.
And to me, it has very little to do with the music because you can't see any music in it. It's correct, and it's clear. But I teach inside out, meaning you have to take a lot of time for the music that you're going to conduct to get inside you. So your preparation is huge. And I'm not talking about just listening to recordings. I'm talking about singing through the piece you're going to conduct, playing it on the piano, playing it on your instrument, whatever you want to do. But you've got to get it inside you first. And I tell you what, if it's inside you, boy, I can teach you how to conduct, no problem. Because this, I, if you have a great feeling about tempo and style and how you really want the music to go, it's awfully hard to conduct it differently. I always tell students I'm not that talented to be able to hear something in my head and conducting it a different way, right? I
Right.
hope I could if I had to. But the thing is, um, I tell this story about this bassoon player who was really a great kid, and she was taking my basic conducting class, and she was having a hard time with an excerpt in class, and I was working with her, and she was being very patient to try to get better, but I could see there it comes, right? The emotion and the frustration.
Right.
And I said to her, I said, Kelly, why don't you just sing what you want for the class? Don't conduct it, just sing it. Just sing it how you want it to go. Like, let's say you're working with a fifth grade orchestra and they didn't speak your language. You're in Japan and you wanted it to go a certain way. Are you going to learn the Japanese to say, play this first note a little longer and the last note a little louder and the middle note needs to be higher? Or are you just going to sing it? Because when I'm in Japan, that's the easiest way to get my thought
Of
through.
course.
If,
Yeah.
if it's not clear what I want with my hands, I'll sing it and they go, hi, and we do it. Okay.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So, but the Inside Out worked with her, and I said to her, I said, why don't you sing it for the class? So she sang it beautifully. God bless her. And I kind of used her as an example because I knew it. She was one of those instrumentalists that didn't mind singing. I wanted to show the other instrumentalists, hey, you need to be able to do this too in front of people.
Yeah.
And as she was singing, she had her hands to her side, but her hands were moving beautifully with the music. Okay? And I went like this looking at her hands so the class could see that I was looking at her hands. And then they started looking at her hands, and I smiled, and they knew what I meant.
Yeah.
Then when she stopped, I said, Kelly, if you would, when you conduct, if you would just sing, and I don't mean necessarily out loud all the time, but I tell you what, if you talk to my front row of my wind ensemble, they hear me a lot. Okay? Um, if you could just conduct what's inside you rather than trying to build some kind of false picture of the music that has what I call no music in it. Like I'll say to my conductors, that was clear, but I just don't see any music. Now the average person would say, how do you see music? I mean, that's crazy. I mean,
Right.
but I mean, have you ever been in a conversation where there's somebody that's not a musician in the room, and the musicians start talking about color and music,
Yeah.
and they're going,
Well,
wait, there's color in music? Yeah, of course there is, right? We all
yeah.
know that, right?
Right.
Um, and then she conducted it again, and she just let her hands do what her what her voice was telling them.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the voice is the master, and if you just let it, if you get, it's with you 24/7, and if you've got this and you've got this, man, you're gonna be fine.
Love it. And it also explains why so many of those great conductors from the early 20th century, before conducting technique was really a thing, got these amazing sounds out of orchestras. And you watch them, you're like, how on earth did they follow that?
Yeah, exactly. But also, if you listen closely to a lot of those old videos, man, they are putting out so much sound while they're.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They're singing it for him.
Oh my
Absolutely.
God. And they're grunting and they're doing it, but
Yeah.
it's so visceral and so inside them.
Right.
And yeah, they didn't need to. I mean, I don't know if I told you this before, but I'm sitting between Ron Bishop and Ed Anderson in the Cleveland Orchestra. Ed was my teacher. And between the tuba and trombone for rehearsal, because I came up early to hear Mazel do Daphnis and Chloe.
Oh, wow.
And I was gonna take a lesson at Severance Hall between the rehearsal and their performance, okay, with Ed.
Okay.
And those are so cool. I mean, I remember taking a lesson with Hal Jenks at the Met, backstage at the Met, and
Come on.
oh yeah, and all these famous people walking by, like Pavarotti walks by,
Stop.
Mingo walks by. Okay, like we're taking lessons. Well, anyways, Mazel, somewhere in Daphnis and Chloe, he does this gesture, and the orchestra goes. They just go,
Wow.
and I'm like, okay, I'm 19 years old, and I'm going,
What just
and
happened?
I said, Mr. Anderson, how does the orchestra know how to release like that when Mr. Mazel just does this? And he goes, oh, we picked the seventh one. And I said, Rob, I said, really? And he laughed, and it was great because now I know what he meant, right?
Yeah.
Is Mazel? That wasn't a release that a junior high orchestra could follow.
Right.
The Cleveland Orchestra, though,
Yeah.
right? And he knows that they're going to release when they want to anyway.
I love
So
it.
he's just saying somewhere in there, and the
Oh,
orchestra,
my.
and they respected that. I mean, Mazel had a hard time after Zell. Anybody
Yeah.
anybody that follows the man, right,
Come
is going
on.
to have a hard
Yeah.
time. But the guy is a genius,
Yeah.
and one of the great artist experience in my life. Because singing in the Cleveland Orchestra chorus, I got to do. For instance, I did Brahms' Alto Rhapsody with Jesse Norman, and on the first half of the concert, second half of the concert, she sang the soprano part for Beethoven 9.
Wow.
She sang Brahms' Alto Rhapsody in the first half, Beethoven 9 in the second half.
Holy cow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's, yeah, I think there's so much of our lives as musicians are just being poured into these experiences. And I think I was just talking to somebody recently that was looking at Eastman, and they asked, you know what? Oh no, they're actually a current student in Eastman's music management program or something. There's a master's of music online in that,
Well, there's an
and
arts leadership program and
that's what it was. Yeah,
our
it's,
Institute for Music Leadership. Yep.
yes, yeah, yeah. And she actually saw the clip that I posted that I'm going to take down because there was too much echo. But she was like, "Oh, I forgot that Rob went to Eastman." So she interviewed me. Long story short, she said, "What advice would you give an incoming Eastman student?" And my advice was go to all of the concerts. Just go to all of the concerts. You know, when I was there, the Cleveland Quartet was still in residence, and my mind was just blown at number one, the opportunities that I had as a student to hear all these concerts, but number two, the number of students that didn't take that opportunity,
Yeah.
which I think is just so tragic.
Well, yeah. I mean, I just to pick one experience for me of thousands when I was a student there, and of course I was a little older doing my doctorate, so
Sure.
I think I understood that I really need to do this
You
stuff.
brought some wisdom, yeah.
Well, just being around Jan DeGaetani,
Oh my gosh.
you know, and she coached me and one of her students on the Crumb Ancient Voices of Children,
Wow.
which was written for her. And it's like, where else do you have those experiences? But the interesting thing is that stuff's going on all the time at Eastman,
Right.
you know, at that kind of level. But not only going to concerts, but you realize, and sometimes I have to tell these students, first of all, I have to tell them two things that I think I shouldn't have to tell them. Across the street is the greatest music library in the world.
Yes. The Sibley, yeah.
And that's all I say. I said, make sure you go there at least once in 4 years. You know, not laugh, right? And then I say, the RPO rehearses in the Eastman Theater, and you can just go in and sit down and listen to them for 10 minutes if that's all you have, or 2 hours.
Yeah.
But where else is there a resident orchestra
Right.
that allows you just to come in and listen? For instance, when I was a student at Eastman, Jerzy Simcoff was the conductor of the RPO, and he would try to lock the theater for the rehearsals
Huh.
to keep people out.
Right.
And of course, we knew ways of getting in. I mean, one time we got in trouble because one of us coughed up in the balcony,
Oh, no.
around and kicked us out. You know, so, um, but just the fact that you've got all this music making at such a high level, that's not just you or not just the stuff that you do.
Right.
And I think that, like I was saying before, with our rotation and getting them to experience all kinds of different things rather than just playing in the wind ensemble, if you can take advantage of that at Eastman, and particularly an undergrad that's there for 4 years, oh my God, that's got to be something that empowers you to be so competitive for the best careers in music.
Yeah. Love that. All right. Well, I have a couple of questions that come from the Ictus Institute members that I want to make sure that we get in here. Some are specifically from composers, and I know that you've done a lot of world premieres and worked with composers. So, what are some common pitfalls you see from student composers learning to write for wind ensembles?
Okay. First of all, I don't think that they repeat enough good stuff. So when you think about
Love that. Yes.
when you think about Beethoven, or any of the great composers that know that when they've got something really good and they're going to bring it back, and you know maybe it's the whole sonata form, recapitulation thing, but I love it when a composer has a great idea, develops it instead of leaves it.
Yeah.
You know, because like composers will say, well, this is my Shostakovich section, and this is my jazz section, and this is my Baroque section. And I'm thinking, okay, but I liked all three of those. Those are three different pieces, and you're trying to just jam them all in one piece. I think so. Bottom line is, don't be afraid to repeat something that's really good, but also enjoy developing it.
Yeah.
Have it start to have different versions of the same thing. I love that in music, and I miss it in a lot of new music that goes on, onto something else because they're not sure what to do with it anymore.
Right.
Okay. And the other big thing I think is rhythm. That I think that composers need to write more idiomatically, rhythmically. So what I mean by that, it's kind of a strange way to discuss it, but I think that they can write rhythms that are more user friendly, not easier, but user
Right.
friendly by the way they look on the page for the players. I don't think that they think about that oboe player, second oboe, that the part is just looks hard,
Right.
and it didn't have to.
Right.
So I mean, to the point where maybe it's just messy, or maybe the engraving is not good, because they just don't know how to use Dorico or anything now. Okay, but but I'm also talking about rhythmically. Okay, you've got this line, and if you'd written it this way, boom, you'd have had it there. But you've written it this way, and it needs three rehearsals.
Yeah.
And
I've seen. Yeah.
I'm talking a lot of times with the other players too, how rhythms
Yeah.
work together. And
Right.
they love the whole uh, rhythmic play. Some people are really into metric modulations and how things evolve into certain way. But you know, they can write a 16th rest at the beginning of a bar, and then have the lick start after that. And if they had just taken that lick and moved it to the beginning of that bar, or made the bar start where the note started, and figured out a way metrically how to write that, the player sees it so much clearly.
Yeah.
Now, in the professional world, they don't put up with that stuff, and I think sometimes that's why professional orchestras don't play as much new music as they should.
Interesting.
It takes too much rehearsal.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
All right. Well, keep that in mind, composers. One other composer question. Have you had, you can go either way with this. Have you had an experience where you commissioned something from a composer and you felt like you had just a great collaborative experience with them? And have you had one on the other side where you worked with the composer on a premiere and you just felt like they were so bullheaded that they were shooting themselves in the foot?
Yeah, I don't remember any time where it just didn't work. Okay,
Okay.
so but that's kind of up to me, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the composer, it's their music, but I always non-verbally let them know that you've given me this music. Now I've got to bring it to life.
Yeah.
Otherwise you conduct it. Okay,
Right.
right?
Right.
But I've never had to really get that way with composers. A lot of them are sticklers for certain things that I think is not worth it. Like for instance, Sid Hodkinson. One time I was supposed to be at quarter note equals 72, and he said I was at 72.5.
No, he did not.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, Sid.
yeah. Well, he says he has perfect metronome, right? Um, but I mean, he was just busting my chops.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd rather the composer say this just like I said about intonation, this sounds high to me.
Right.
If the composer could just say this seems a little fast to me, so I take that as actually helpful
Yes. Yeah.
rather than you're too fast.
Right. Right.
But a lot of times composers will find out that they did write the wrong tempos.
Sure.
That I really, for some reason on the computer when I played it back, it sounded right at 72, but it really is 80, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think sometimes I'll come back to them. That's what's nice with working with living composers is I can have access to ask them questions along the way.
Right.
So if I'm premiering a piece and I think, is this F sharp or what's the rhythm here? There might be a mistake, or did you mean to do this? One composer I was working with who was strictly 12 tone years ago. Everything was perfect in their matrix. The whole piece it was perfect, except for one note. There was one note that didn't fit the row,
Oh my God.
and I knew it was an error. Okay, so I get back to him and I say to him, I said, is this really F sharp? I said, because it doesn't fit in any of the inversions or retrograde. None of the rows, or even if it's like just a cell, it doesn't fit. And he goes, "Oh yeah," he says, "that was just intuitive." He would not admit that it was a mistake, but it was so obvious that it was, because every single thing else in that piece, even the rhythm was serialized.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
But
Wow.
I love working with composers.
How
I
do you choose a composer to work with or to commission?
Well, I think a lot of times if I hear something really great for the orchestra that they've done, and they haven't written a wind ensemble piece, I'll approach them and say, okay, But there are composers that have never written any large ensemble pieces that come to me and they say, "I'd like to write a piece." I'll say, "Sure, I'll read it." But see, I'm not commissioning that, so I would be very worried about spending a lot of money on something that didn't work out. But
Right.
you really are, if you commission, literally commission, or even get in a consortium for a commission, you are saying, "I'm going to play this piece," and sometimes they're not as good as others, right? And if you're the lead commissioner, I also think you should have in your mind a responsibility of playing it more than once.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's because there's so many one and done pieces, and it's too
Right.
bad. It's too bad,
Yeah.
because I know that when I premiere a new piece that doesn't quite, you know, speak to me, but it went well, and I worked hard on it, and it was worth doing. But it's not one of those pieces that I would say, "Man, I can't wait to do it again."
Yeah.
I still will try to do it again, and I can't think of a piece that when I did that I didn't like better. The next
Ah, I
the
love
next
that.
Yeah.
Love
Well,
that.
you know what? I knew it better. I knew the pitfalls. I knew how to get around it. Um, so I think I do pieces the second and third time, no matter what, better anyways.
Yeah. Oh, that
I
makes a lot of sense.
I love doing
Yeah.
pieces with the Eastman Wind Ensemble that I've been doing for 40 years, like Music for Prague. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean that's one of my pieces, man. And or Schwantner Mountain Rising Nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
I just love. I'm doing the Stravinsky Symphonies of Wind Instruments right now, which I've done my whole life,
Yeah.
and this is their first time,
Of
which
course.
which
Right.
which is
Yes.
just an incredible experience for me
Yeah.
to watch and listen.
Right.
That they're like, "What? This is crazy, right?" Yeah, but it's cool, right? But they may not realize it till they're my age, but it's
Right.
still worth it.
Yeah. I love that. Hey, do you? We have a question here from a string teacher, an orchestra, high school orchestra teacher, and she's asking, how can she better reach her wind, brass, and percussion students during rehearsal? Is there something in your toolbox or analogies or phrases? She's just a little intimidated conducting the back rows of her orchestra.
Is she a string player?
She's a string player.
Yeah. Yeah, that can be tough either way, right? Because I've seen brass players having be very uncomfortable with string players too.
Yeah.
So I mean, it kind of goes back to your question about should everybody do what I did when I was younger and play all these instruments? And the answer is yes, you should. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but not everybody can do that.
Right.
I think the best thing is she's got to have friends and or colleagues that are wind players in percussion
Yeah.
and she can talk to and get ideas about her particular situation. Did you say it was a middle school band or something?
High school orchestra.
High
High
school
school
orchestra.
orchestra.
Yeah, that's tough because a lot of the music that she's doing is probably arrangements,
Right.
and the winds, brass, and percussion have a lot of measures rest, and that's when they get in trouble. Or either that or that's when they make mistakes. It's a funny thing
Yeah.
in the orchestra because there are so many measures rest, and they basically go to rest during that.
Right.
That's where they lose their how they're in the music, and they count seven measures rest and then they jump back in. But it's like jumping on a train that's running instead of running with it. You
Good
see,
point.
yeah. So when you're resting, for instance, I compare it to tell her that look at what the trombone section does in a big band, jazz band, when the saxophones stand up and they're playing like a bridge or something that's just the saxophones, and the trombones are what are the trombones doing? They're doing this,
Grooving, yeah.
and they're listening, and they're so grooving on what's going on there. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you can get your players involved in when they're resting, I think when they're playing, they should probably be okay. I mean, that's what they came to do. But the problem is they rest so much in the orchestra. She should find music where it really, maybe it does have more involvement. If she's worried about the winds,
Yeah.
brass, and percussion, there are arrangements that actually involve those instruments more. Okay. The other thing is you can do a piece with just those players.
Oh, brilliant.
I mean, think about this. When Vincent Persichetti was asked why he wrote his Sixth Symphony for band, it was the first five or not, okay? Somebody interviewed him, said, Maestro, why did you write your Sixth Symphony for band? He said, I figured by the 57th bar, the strings were never going to come in. And so that's why it's a brilliant piece, is
Yeah.
he didn't write it with a band in mind. He just wrote his music. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think I would try to do different things with programming, with repertoire, maybe feature even a soloist on something where the rest of them really are kind of grooving. Because, the winds, brass, and percussion, I think it's a hard sell for them to groove on string players because they're so different,
Sure.
right? Okay?
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of opportunity by the music that she selects. I was kidding with a junior high band one time because they were making so many counting errors. Just music, just measures rest, and they would like miss an entrance. And I ended up feeling like I had to cue everybody in that had any, multi-measure rest, right?
Yeah.
I said to them, the National Association of Music Educators just met last week, and we have decided to change the name of the word rest to think. And so,
I love it.
so oboes, you have 7 measures of think here, not 7 measures of rest. What are you going to think about? How about you think about what we're doing?
That's great.
And no, and they were so convinced. I mean, that's what I love kids at that age,
Yeah.
or even younger.
Yeah.
You can convince them of anything,
I
But
know. I love it.
yeah,
I
that's
love it.
boy. I tell you what, I've done some high school orchestras, and that is an issue. That's not unusual what she's going through, but I think the easiest fix is picking repertoire where they're more engaged. Not all the time, but they can't have 60 measures of rest and you expect them to be totally with it.
Yeah. No,
And
that's great. That's
and
great.
what I did, and I even did this at Cornell too, because I had the chamber orchestra at Cornell. I sometimes with music will write special entrances for them. I'll write something that might just come out of the music, and so it's kind of an editing, but also like an insert. And it wasn't to keep them busy. It would be me thinking, wow, this would be cool. I've got a really good clarinet player here. Maybe that clarinet doubles this with the violas in this section. And then all of a sudden, on their stand that next day, they've got an insert that was written just for them.
I love that.
So it's personal and it's the buy-in. I think the buy-in is the huge thing at that age.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder, my first job out of Eastman was, I was the high school choir band and orchestra director and the middle school choir director. And, coming out of Eastman, coming out of conservatory, I think that I treated the printed music a little bit too preciously. In other words, if this arranger didn't say that the clarinet should come in bar 40, then I'm not going to have them do that.
But it's an
Talk to us
arrangement.
a little bit about that. Yeah.
It's an arrangement to start with.
Yes, exactly. Exactly right. Exactly
So
right.
yeah, you're right. But see, the thing is, if there are some,
But even if it's a high school orchestra playing Mozart,
yeah,
you're not recording it. You're not being reviewed by. I mean, what do you think about a high school teacher, this teacher, doing something like what you're talking about in a piece that was not arranged.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
No, and Mozart won't care.
right?
All right, and guess what? You're not at Eastman, and some musicologist is not going to come up to you and say you can't do that.
Yeah,
Okay, this is your program. These are your kids, and if you're really smart about what you change, like let's say you even just changed an octave that's just not working.
right,
Okay, is it sacred? Can you not touch that?
right.
Okay, now there's some things that are sacred. I would never do Rite of Spring for wind ensemble.
Okay,
Right, and that no, no.
yeah, yeah,
But I have the Mozart serenades, and
yeah,
I don't really mess with them because I'm at Eastman, and my
right,
players can play what's on the page.
yeah,
But at Cornell, I had to do some editing of the Mozart serenades to make it work. I didn't have basset horns.
right. Of
Okay,
course.
so Christopher Hogwood did a talk at Cornell one time while I was doing the Grand Partita, the Mozart Grand Partita. And the big authentic music guy, right?
Yes.
You better do
Yeah.
it this way because it was done this way 250 years ago, right?
Right.
Well, authentic is a hard one because we don't. Authentic would mean the same players and the same instruments.
Yeah.
They're dead.
Right.
They're gone. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So at the very end of the talk, I thought, okay, I'm gonna throw something out there. I said, Mr. Hogwood, I'm working with Cornell students that are non-majors, and we're actually playing the Mozart Grand Partita. And he goes, oh, And I said, I don't have access to basset horns, and even if I did, I don't have players that have experience on it, and it wouldn't be great. They're engineers, pre-med, pre-law. They don't have time to practice the basset horn, but they're pretty good clarinet players. And I said, what would you think if I did it instead of 2 clarinets and 2 basset horns, I did it with 4 clarinets? Because there's only a couple places where the basset horn range goes below the clarinet range where I'd have to adjust something. And it's not very noticeable. To somebody that doesn't, live and sleep with that piece. And it opened my eyes. He said to me, and he knew my situation. I think if I was at Eastman, he'd say, no, you got to do it with bass horns.
Right.
And if you're at Eastman, you don't have basset horns. What's wrong with you, right?
Right.
I just bought 2 basset horns 2 weeks ago. They're expensive, right? He said to me, if it comes down to playing the music or not playing the music, play the music.
Oh, I love that.
He says, because that's great music and that will change their lives. And if it's not perfect, which it won't be with your students, obviously, but if you change it so that they're able to perform great music and you do it smart way, don't just put something in the tenor sax and think it's going to work. Because that's what people will do with bassoon parts. And then they'll think, oh, that's the same tessitura as the tenor sax. That'll work. No, it's not. It's not the right sound. It's not the right substitute.
Yeah.
But if you're really smart about it, and you're playing great music, that changes people's lives.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's leave it there because I can't imagine a better way to end that. Changing people's lives with great music. Dr. Mark Scatterday, thank you so much for your time. It's just been so informative and just a real joy. Thank you. And thank you for everything you do for the whole industry, the way that you're impacting students on the daily. That's you're doing great work there.
Thanks. I appreciate that a lot. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it today.